I'm going to tell a little bit about the first results study we've done to stakeholder management for startup businesses. So let's go to the results and a little bit about the background. The background is this article I found on TechCrunch. Well, it starts with this sentence that in the startup industry, the government relations are not seen as very top of mind. In fact, maybe the government sometimes is seen as a kind of enemy. We are going to change the world, and the government is trying to hold us back or to slow down our evolution or revolution, or whatever you want to call it. So that's a narrative you see a lot in media, and a narrative you see a lot when you talk to those startups. But in fact, a lot of big startups, I don't know if you can call them startups anyway, but like Uber and B&B, they depend on government relations for their business. So it's not something you can ignore, the relation with the government. But still, there are different strategies being used, especially if you take, for instance, at Airbnb, was in the news the last couple of years a lot with deals they have been making with, for instance, the Amsterdam City Council about paying taxes. They didn't pay taxes. The people that rented out the houses didn't pay taxes, and the City Council of Amsterdam wants to have a tourist tax, of course. And they've been talking and negotiating, and in the end, now if you stay in Amsterdam, but if you do rent one, then you pay taxes to the City Council for tourist taxes, and that's something they've negotiated and they've made an effort in. What kind of approach do we see with other startups? So that's why we started this research, to discover insights in how those startups are using stakeholder management as a tool to deal with all kinds of partners they face. So we did a couple of interviews with 8 Dutch startups, trying to focus on startups that are as disruptive as possible, because then you enter a playing field that's probably where there's probably a lot of room for arguing and fighting. So that's why we chose to have the most disruptive ones included in our sample. The conclusions. One of the most things I didn't expect was that it's not a topic for startups to discuss stakeholder management. So if you look at the menus of board meetings, the term stakeholder management is nowhere. You cannot find it there. So it doesn't mean that they do anything with stakeholder management, but it's not a term they've used to talk about these kind of issues. Then the selection of stakeholders, there's a kind of mix between deliberate attempts to influence certain stakeholders and some very opportunistic. I see a chance and I grip my chances, and I try to influence them right away to get my things done. So for the part of it, it's a kind of a strategy, and for another kind, it's just opportunistic thinking and doing. Is it a battle? Also, I found it noticeable that there is none of the respondents experienced their stakeholder engagements as a battle. So this Uber thinking, like we are going to confront everything, I didn't find in the interviews. So and that's why they don't see as stakeholder management or stakeholder confrontations as taking over the market or disrupting the market, but rather as adjusting the market or improving or modernizing the market. So the word struggle or anything that has the same kind of meaning, we didn't encounter a lot. Another important thing was scale. If you grow from your first phase of having a business idea to maturity, all the startups did encounter some kind of moment that they came above the radar, and suddenly they experienced encounters from all kinds of parties that are interested in talking to the startups. This brings us to the issue of milestones. Every startup could mention a kind of milestone And after that milestone, things changed. Suddenly they were on the media, for instance, or suddenly they were on the radar of big corporations or governments trying to have talks or whatever they want to do, but they want to have encounters with the organization. And those milestones can be very financial, the first profit or having a certain share of market. That kind of milestone, financial milestones, could be winning a contest. There are a lot of startup contests, and organizations that did win a contest received some media attention, and that resulted in encounters with all kinds of parties. And partnerships were also mentioned. So if you were able to get on the table of some big corporation, then you're doing well. And this first encounter with a certain kind of corporation or big corporation resulted in other corporations that trying to get aboard. So your first big company that's willing to partner up with you is very important to have one. What were the outcomes that were mentioned by in interviews? Were media attention? What was the result of our efforts, especially for a startup that's starting up in the financial sector? The financial sector, you have to do with the financial authorities, and every party that has an agreement with the financial authorities normally are the big banks that everybody knows. So if you're a new entrant in that market, that gives you a lot of media attention. There are a lot of reputation gains. So why are we doing stakeholder management? Is we want to use stimulate our reputation by partnering up with other big players. And most of the results are very focused on business development, getting your business further. So having a deal to have to grow your business there, to reach out to new clients, for instance. Most of the engagements with stakeholders were face-to-face contacts. So other kinds of instruments like memberships or other kinds of regulated stakeholder activities. We didn't encounter a lot, but an instrument that's typical for this kind of businesses are contests. So a lot of startup contests, and they are being used very deliberately to get media attention or to get well known or to get on the table of other parties. But there are so many of those contests that you have to be very careful about where you put your effort in. So one of them said, I only enter a competition in which I can almost surely win, because then it's worth the effort. If I go to a big startup event somewhere on the other side of the world, and it's not typically my kind of business, then, well, maybe it's better to focus on my business instead of focusing on the contest. The startups are typically they've limited resources, of course, because most of those startups we've met have 10 to 15 persons working for the company. So they're very small, have very limited resources, and that makes them very focused on getting your business further, on growing the business. So everything that's not directly directed to growing the business is being scrutinized very carefully, and most of the time the decision is made not to go in that direction. So if it's not client or product driven, then most of the time it's being put off the table and it's not interesting enough to pursue any further.